Hey, it's Chris West from House Calls Vermont, and we're here at 10 Old Stage for the weekly update on what's going on with the renovation of this old farmhouse from the 1830s. And last week, we were showing you that we were putting in some of these supporting beams here to support the floor because there was a dip in the floor, right? That dip was happening. And the reason it's happening is because the floor upstairs was unsupported and is these 3-inch rough sawn planks. So if we look up here, here's my hand for reference. This is 3 inches, and these planks run from one side all the way to the other side. That's a span of 25 feet. So it was unsupported, and we were getting a sag in the middle, in the middle. So in order to take the sag out and just make the floors much more sturdy, we were putting in some supporting beams, and I showed you that a couple weeks ago. These are the supporting beams we put in earlier, and here's the new one. We put a pocket in next to the chimney, and then the last one is this one, which runs from this wall all the way across to that pocket next to the door. And with that, we have a really sturdy support underneath these planks. Now, the beams are not fully supporting all the weight because it doesn't have to. The boards are doing that. And the way that the wall is built, if we look at this wall here, the wall is got a shelf out here. So in the basement, there's a shelf that comes almost a foot, and then it goes up, and up here it steps out again. So we've got two steps. We've got the basement wall with a step, and then it moves out, and then it goes up, and then it goes out. And that's how these planks are done. And you can see that very clearly here, where that step is, and that piece of wood is the top of that. And we have the same thing in the basement. So let me just show you that in a hole. So if I'm standing up here and we look here, you can see that the basement wall starts right there. So it's about a foot of the floor from on the first floor, which is also 3-inch sawn planks, which you can see there. And those are also supported. I showed you that in earlier videos, that downstairs we have the same kind of supporting beams running on, and it's made the whole building much more sturdy. The next step here is to find out where this supporting piece, so we have this piece of wood here, and in some places that piece of wood has rotted out, and that has happened really just in one place, and that's right here in the corner. For some reason, and you can even see the water damage on the wood here, there was a leak in the roof here, which also ended up rotting the beam that used to be up there. I think I have images of that. But let's go upstairs and just take a quick look at the floor there and figure out how we're gonna work this out, because this is the master, and I can see somebody putting their bed in front of this beautiful big window, and here you can see very clearly we have quite a bit. You can also see that step out, right? That's pretty nice. What we're seeing here, the step out really only goes to here, because this is just the trim on top of the window. You can see it more clearly here, right? We've got about 3.5 inches. So the beam, that piece of wood, that seat I would call it, that the beams sit on, so there's a plank running along the wall, and then the floor planks sit like this, that is rotten in these last 4 feet, as are the actual floor planks. They're not so rotten they're gonna fall out, but they're also not so rotten that I'd feel comfortable with someone putting a heavy bed on there, and then, you know, themselves and their, you know, imagine getting into bed with your spouse and your kids, and you've got, you know, 700-800 pounds there. So how do we, without replacing these particular floorboards and without adding some epoxy, which is not that structural, what I figured is if I take a sheet of steel, like a 3/8 steel, 4 foot long by 2 feet wide, then we'd have a 2 feet wide, 4 foot long piece of steel, which goes into really good solid wood, and that will then go on top of the replacement piece of seating that we're having. And I'll show you that again from downstairs, just so you get the idea. So we've got this seat here, right? This piece of wood right there, and that piece of wood, it stops at the doorway here. You can see that rounding. Now on this side, that piece of wood is not at all rotten from this board on. So what I'm going to do is get that piece of steel and attach it here on the underside, bolt that to it so that it will have some really good strong strength, and possibly even a plate on the top. We'll see. The idea is that the top will just be the actual floor, but we have to see how sandable it is. Maybe on the top we'll put some epoxy in those just to make them sandable for the floor. Not a big fan of epoxy just because it's you know, pretty nasty stuff for the environment, but in this case a little bit maybe will be used. So that's the plan for the inside, and that's going really well. And we've taken up the rest of the floor here, and we have those floorboards stacked here. Now these floorboards, which were just pulled up, have been down for, you know, 140 years, or 170, depending on when they were put down. And of course they have lead paint on the top. So the idea here is this is lead paint, but the back of it is not lead paint. So we're going to pull all of the, let me just show that. So that is not. So what we're going to do is we're going to de-nail them, and then we're going to run them through a planer and put them back down as flooring, and that encapsulates the lead low, right, between the subfloor and the floor. So that's a long-term process, and that's definitely finish work, and we're nowhere near finished work. So the next thing, and there is Sebastian. Hello, Sebastian. And Sebastian is in the process of pulling off some plywood so that we can get to the framing. And the reason we need to get the framing is because we want the insulation that's going to be on the brick to go past the brick building. And so in here you can see that the brick building has a post next to it. That post is the beginning of the garage, and so we want to have the insulation run along this plane from the brick to the wood structure as a continuous insulation, but also air sealing. So let's take a look just outside at what we're planning to do to the outside. I left my sunglasses inside, which is horrible for me. And here's Jack Leach again. And so Jack is working on this sheathing. This is going to be right now it's not yet affixed to the wall. It's just hanging on these Simpsons strips. But this is all going to be bolted to the wall. It's all hanging off of the structure, but this will actually be sitting flat against here once we get it affixed. And then on top of that we have our 5.5 inches of insulation and then double strapping, and that's the final treatment on the outside. But when we get to the end of the brick over here, we have a garage, and that's what Sabah's working on. We're going to cut away just a 8-inch strip along there so that the plywood can go past that, so we can continue the continuous insulation to the other building. And that's what we're doing today. It's a good day. We're getting a lot of work done. I think some people even call it a wonderful day. So I don't know who that might be, because people like sunlight, I guess, and warm weather. It's been in the 60s and it's very sunny, so people really enjoy that. There's Jack. Don't say no, Jack.
What's that?
Don't say no.
All right.
And the daylilies are about to bloom, so that's really nice. You got these extremely bursting. So in a couple of days we'll have beautiful daylilies as well. So that's the report from 10 Old Stage for this week. And oh, just one last thing. This is the insulation that I got. This is 5.5 inches of used polyiso. This is factory seconds. This is insulation that would have been thrown into a landfill. So by buying it, we're rescuing it from being in a landfill, and we're putting it on the walls. Okay, that's it from 10 Old Stage for this week. Until next week.